Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. The UK is officially in a second recession as the British economy shrank for the second straight quarter. Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron, whose government has been pushing trickle-down austerity for nearly the last 2 years, called the new economic numbers very, very disappointing. The UK joins the long list of other European nations that have pursued trickle-down austerity and watched their economies tank, including Greece, Italy, and Spain. Meanwhile, in France, Conservative President Nicolas Sarkozy is desperately trying to keep his job against socialist François Hollande, who is running on an anti-austerity, pro-growth platform. And in the Netherlands, the Dutch government is in limbo after it caved to grassroots pressure and failed to pass its own austerity budget. Over the last year, we've seen the devastating consequences of trickle-down austerity, the job layoffs, the riots, and the suicides. And now the politicians, banksters, and technocrats pushing trickle-down austerity in Europe are feeling the political backlash from their angry populations. Meanwhile, multimillionaire Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney are pushing the same sort of trickle-down austerity here in the United States, hoping we won't notice the economic consequences on full display across the Atlantic. Screwed by an enormous burden of debt, students around the nation are rallying today and calling for a student loan debt jubilee. The total amount of outstanding student loan debt has now topped $1 trillion, outweighing credit card debt and automobile debt for the first time ever. The Occupy movement is leading the rallies today, calling for students across the nation to come together and pledge to not repay their student loans, pressuring lawmakers and banksters to have to eventually forgive the massive debts. To make matters worse for students, the interest rate for federal student loans is scheduled to double in July if Congress doesn't act. President Obama appeared on late-night TV to urge Congress to act quickly to provide relief for students, but Republicans so far aren't budging. Of course, the easiest way to fix this problem is to do what most of the world's other developed nations do, define higher education as a basic right and send our young people to college for free. In the best of the rest of the news, on Tuesday, 76 people, including actor Noah Wiley, were arrested for demonstrating outside Congressman Paul Ryan's Capitol Hill office. The demonstration was organized by the group Disabilities for Attendant Programs Today, which is trying to raise awareness about the devastating impacts of Paul Ryan's trickle-down Republican budget on state Medicaid programs. The Ryan budget gives $3 trillion in tax cuts to billionaires and pays for that by radically cutting Medicaid funding over the next 10 years, cutting federal health care money to treat the working poor and disabled people by over a third. The Urban Institute estimated that the Republican cuts would lead to 27 million poor, disabled, and elderly Americans losing their Medicaid coverage over the next decade. This meat axe Republicans want to take to our nation's social safety net only does one thing: free up funds for a $3 trillion tax cut for the Koch brothers, Mitt Romney, and the rest of our nation's oligarchs. Progressives need to hang the Ryan budget around the neck of all the Republicans who voted for it, so the voters who are looking out for the billionaires, so the voters can see who is looking out for the billionaires and who's looking out for the rest of us. First, corporations and now Americans are fleeing the American Legislative Council following the success of a boycott campaign against ALEC that led to more than a dozen corporate members leaving the Koch brother-funded think tank that writes corporate-friendly legislation. The Progressive Change Campaign Committee is targeting Democratic state lawmakers who also happen to be members of ALEC. As the organization said in an email to supporters, bad Democrats allow ALEC to claim bipartisan support for extreme policies, and that's unacceptable. According to some counts, there are 26 Democrats who are members of ALEC, and already some of them are bowing to pressure and dropping out, including New Mexico State Senator George Munoz and South Carolina State Representative Ted Vick. Americans have figured out that ALEC is a laundering operation for corporations to write our laws, and the only way to end that corruption of our democracy is to keep up the pressure on the members and the funders of this right-wing front group until it stops trying to destroy our democracy. The Democratic Party might get a little more progressive. Two Blue Dog Democrats lost their primaries last night to more progressive Democrats. Blue Dog Pennsylvania Representative Tim Holden, who found himself in a more progressive district after redistricting, lost to challenger Matt Cartwright. And also in Pennsylvania, Blue Dog Representative Jason Altmaier lost to fellow incumbent Mark Kritz after both Democrats had their districts redrawn into one. As Harry Truman said 60 years ago, the nation doesn't want any more phony Democrats. While war hawks in Fox so-called news beat the drum to war in Iran, one of Israel's top military chiefs is urging everyone to tone it down. In an interview with the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, Lieutenant General Benny Gantz said that Iran still hasn't begun to develop a nuclear weapon and doesn't think Iran will decide to in the near future. Gantz said that the Iranian leadership is made up of very rational people who wouldn't want to build a bomb that might spark a conflict. Gantz also said that sanctions against Iran are starting to bear fruit, despite previous concerns in Israel and the U.S. that such sanctions wouldn't work. And finally, a new survey by the Brennan Center for Justice shows just how out of touch the 5 right-wingers on the Supreme Court are. According to the survey, 69% of Americans reject the Supreme Court's hard-right argument that unlimited corporate spending in our elections won't lead to corruption. On the other hand, only 15% support Citizens United. And that's the way it is today, Wednesday, April 25th, 2012. I'm Thom Hartmann.